Welcome to the Byword Show. I'm your host, Hannah Hughes. Bywords is all about equipping women for purposeful living by starting conversations, celebrating stories, and inspiring faith. In a world that applauds the hustle, I'm here to help you break free from the lies and come back to what really matters. It's time to get real, get rooted in truth, and come alive in relationship with Jesus so you can show up to each day with intention and confidence no matter where you're at in your story. Here we believe that embracing our stories brings hope, healing, and purpose to the process, and sharing our stories helps others do the same. Whether you're looking for a midweek faith refresh, practical tools for pursuing your dreams, or just need some good old-fashioned girl talk, you're in the right place. Grab your latte and let's dive in. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Byword Show. Today is the day, y'all, and I'm so glad you're here. We have got Ally McCrory here with us, who's actually a friend of mine from Texas, and she has just released her first book. So congratulations. We were just talking about it before we hit record. It's so exciting. Welcome to the show, Ally.
Thank you. I'm excited and honored to be here too.
I'm so excited. Today, y'all, we're talking about postpartum depression. And I know this is a heavy topic, but it's one that definitely needs to be talked about. So I'm really excited to have you here to just dive into this because you've walked a long road and you've now written about it. But before we get into it, I have to ask you our icebreaker question, which is what has been filling your cup lately, both literally and figuratively?
So I just got back from North Carolina at a She Speaks conference, which was fantastic.
Ooh.
Yes. So if you ever have an opportunity to go, I say go. It's for Christian communicators, and Lisa Turkhurst is there, and that's like her brainchild. So
Wow.
lots of information. I came back feeling like so much more full of hope. Um, just because when you're writing, you know that it kind of feels a little daunting at times. And not only that, but even the social media aspect of it can get really hard. And they talk a lot about, this is why we do what we do. It's for the one, it's not for thousands of likes. It's for that one person that's going to hear or see or read whatever you have to say and make a connection with you and hope in Jesus. And so definitely it was life changing. Absolutely life changing.
That is so cool.
Yeah. So have you been?
No, but I'm like, sign me up.
Yes. Okay. So next year, sign up. It's fantastic.
Okay, I love that. And then what's in your actual cup?
I just drink black coffee. It's pretty boring.
Plain and simple though, like gets the job done. I'm all for
Yep.
that these days. I'm like, we just
Yeah.
need effective. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into this topic because it's an important one. And, like I'm sure you've experienced moments also in your story that have maybe even felt taboo talking about postpartum depression. There's just a lot to this. So, why don't you take us back to the beginning and share a little bit about your own story and experience with postpartum depression and how you got to where you are today?
So I was born and raised in like a really super small town in Glendive, Montana. So we were just like 3 hours outside of Billings, very small. But when you have a small town like that, you have small town behavior. So there was a lot of alcohol and drug abuse and things of that nature. Um, and so I was already kind of on that cusp of having some anxiety anyway. And then my father passed away from throat and mouth cancer when I was 15. So that shoved me down into this downward spiral of depression. So I've already got the cards stacked against me. I've got anxiety and depression. They're already here. And then we moved around a little bit. So at 18, we moved to Texas, and then we moved to Georgia. And then I met my first husband, and he actually is from the same small town that I'm from. We went to school together. So we ended up moving back to Texas because he's in the oil field. So with him being in the oil field, I ended up being alone quite a bit. And I really, in a new place, didn't really have a whole lot of friends. I was kind of alone by myself. And then I ended up getting pregnant pretty much by myself. And that's because he was gone in the oil field all the time. And then once the baby came, so I had been put on antidepressant pills and anxiety medication to help with my struggles from before when I was younger that carried on through. But during the pregnancy, they were like, let's take you off of that. You don't need to have that while you're pregnant. I was like, okay, we'll do that. But it was kind of scary to wean yourself off. So I was already struggling there. Not a Christian. Well, I mean, I was a Christian, but I wasn't walking in the faith. So I had that kind of against me too. I hate to say against me, but I mean, I wasn't leaning on the Lord. So you've got
Mm,
all these little baby factors coming into play, and they can make one big issue. And then I get
right.
pregnant almost immediately. Like the pregnancy was super chill. We had no problems. I mean, I didn't even really start showing until I was probably like 6 months along. It's very easy, no morning sickness, but almost immediately after she came, it was like a brick wall just fell on my heart and on my chest and in my mind. And I could not for the life of me figure out what was going on. And I started to do some research. Obviously, it's the worst thing to do when you go on Google and you're like, what is wrong with me? And they're like, you're dying,
Right.
but you're really not. That's what they tell you. And so it was more than baby blues. It wasn't just a little like I'm sappy here, or mopey here, or kind of feel like Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. It was none of that. It was like it was heavy and weighty,
Yeah.
and it felt like I couldn't get out, and I couldn't understand why I wasn't excited to be a new mom. Um, and then I was blessed with this perfect little baby, and she was beautiful, and she was so sweet, and I'm like struggling in the back of my mind, you know. So then the irrational thoughts start to come into play, right? So then well, what if this happens to her? What if this happens to her? What if I hurt myself? What if I hurt my baby? So all of these thoughts start to come in. And girl, I thought I was just battling this all by myself because I could not
Mm,
figure out what was going on. And I didn't want to talk to anybody because then they'd be like, well,
yeah.
we're going to take your baby away, which is terrifying. It just got so hard to be alone struggling with postpartum depression by myself. And then she ended up having colic.
Mm,
So we would cry and cry and cry hours on end. And it always happened at the end of the day where I'm exhausted. And I just spent lots of time, you know, I just said, Jesus, I know you're out there. I know that you're here. I believe that you're here. Can you pull me out of this pit? Just took so much time and prayer and pleading. And finally, one night, I remember where I was. I remember where she was. I remember what she was wearing. It was like this little yellow onesie. And I just kept praying that night, please, Lord, like take me out of this. I can't do this anymore. I can't do this by myself. Is that what she's going to wear to her funeral? Is that little yellow onesie? Like I'm panicking. And all of a sudden, it was just like, you're okay. Ugh, it makes me want to cry, but it was just the most amazing feeling to know that I was no longer alone. I wasn't
yeah.
alone, and I never was alone. When you get so tied up and scared, and really, it was just a lot of emotions, and it's hard to see them at that time.
Yeah, it is. And there's so much in that that I relate to personally. I mean, y'all know, well, now we were just talking about this before we hit record.
Hmm.
Della, my daughter, is about to be 1. And I feel like just recently we're starting to come out of that whole postpartum fog. And I got diagnosed with postpartum depression after having her as well. And kind of a similar story for those who don't know. I had 3 miscarriages before I had my pregnancy with Ella. And so I was on antidepressants as well, just trying to cope with all of that while, trying again. And then through pregnancy, just the fear of that. Like pregnancy in itself is crazy, wild emotions already and hormones. And
Hmm.
then postpartum came, and, we also had complications and a NICU stay and other factors, like you said, just so many things piling up. And then you have this precious baby, and you
Hmm.
feel like, you said that, you feel like I should just be happy. Everything should be perfect and easy. I should just be able to enjoy this. But it does, something just feels off. Like I don't feel like myself. I feel sad. And it's more than just baby blues. Like there's something more to that. I mean, the thing is, whether or not a mom gets diagnosed with postpartum depression, postpartum is hard. Like that's just the truth of it. There's so much adjusting happening,
Yes.
major learning curve, tons of adjustments as you relearn life and motherhood and living in this new version of your body. So for you, what were some of the early signs and things that you experienced that made you realize, okay, this is something more and I do need help? And
Hmm.
then from there, like, what did you do to start healing and navigating that process?
It hit me, you know, right because one of my best friends from Georgia was pregnant at this almost the same time. as me. And I was able to talk to her about some of these things, but I didn't really talk about a whole lot of it. And she never really brought anything up. And so I thought, oh my gosh, I'm the only person that is struggling with this.
Mm.
Keep it to yourself. Don't say anything. They're going to think you're a weirdo. And then I'm like, well, who am I supposed to turn to? So it
Right.
got to the point where, I mean, it was the irrational thoughts that were invading my brain 24/7. I mean, it was just constant bombarding. It's like arrows from the enemy, just constantly hitting me in the back and in the front, wherever my vulnerable spots were. I mean, I think the scariest part was you start to think about, you see or you hear about moms that have been struggling with postpartum depression and they do something about it. Like they hurt their baby or they hurt themselves. And so even though I had the thoughts, I never had the action behind it, but I had the thoughts and it scared me enough to be like, there's something super wrong here.
Mm.
So it took me a little while, it took a little bit for me to be brave enough to step forward and talk to my doctor about it and be like, hey, this is really what's going on in my life. And I'm terrified and I need some help. I'm a new mom. I don't really know what to do.
Yeah.
And so my doctor was very gracious and we started back on the antidepressant pills and then also the anxiety. So we were able to kind of weave them back in there. Although at that point I was still seeking God fully. Like I knew that that's what I needed to do. And I was just that night. I mean, he just came in and lifted it up. But at the same time, I found other things that were able to help me heal. I joined a gym and I started doing I started doing just group fitness, just something very simple, weights or step or whatever. And then I started to create friendships within that as well. And so that was really helpful because for me, when I get overwhelmed, I isolate.
Mm.
I'm just like the worst hermit ever. Don't talk to me. Don't look at me. I'm going to
Yeah.
go hide. And so it forced me to get out. It forced me to get out because not only was I getting out with people, but I was also doing something good for my body, my mind. And she was like 9 months old. And I remember it because she would not stay in that kid's zone. She was like, keep me out of here. She's crying, like throwing a fit. I'm like, okay, fine. Well, mommy needs to work out. So you're just going to come in the workout room with me and you're just going to sit in the corner and be a good little baby at 9 months old. Like, really? She's not 15. She doesn't know like what that means. But anyway, so I like plopped her over there in the corner and it was a yoga class. And so I was like, this is really important. I really need this. And I realized in that moment that she could still be there in the room and I could still be doing whatever I need to do and we could coexist like peacefully. And yoga really is something that picked me back up off the ground. I had never really done yoga. I never really worked out. It wasn't really my thing. But once I realized the mental connection, like the mind and the body and the chemicals, right? Like all those things, once they start working together, I felt so much better. It was incredible. So I would say get out. Even if it's not, if you have like, do you want to go walk, go do something just to stimulate your exercise and your brain. And it's so important. That was a big deal for me when I was healing.
That's huge. And I love that you touched on that because anyone who's listened to this show before knows how much I talk about it all being connected, spirit, soul, body, they all work together. So it's beautiful that you started experiencing a change mentally when you're moving your body and you were
Hmm.
also leaning on the Lord, and all at the same time these pieces were working together to facilitate your healing journey. It's such a good point also that it can be something as simple as just getting out of your comfort zone a little bit, showing
Yeah.
up at the gym, showing up for a class, even having your baby right there with you,
Hmm.
just taking little steps because I feel like with postpartum depression or just postpartum in general, being in that fog, you do feel like you're so alone and you question all the times, like, am I doing this wrong? You got mom guilt. You've got all of this stuff just weighing on you. Like you're trying to do a good job, but you feel like you can't because you've got these
Yeah.
crazy thoughts going on in your head. And it's so tempting to just hide. It's
Yes.
so tempting to just keep doing it by yourself. So for you, I know you said as well, your husband was away a lot during that time.
Hmm.
So for you, was it scary at first, like getting out of your comfort zone or like letting people into that pain that you were experiencing?
Yes. I did not want to do it. Like I was terrified. I thought, no, I'm okay. I'm okay to stay home and just be a hermit and be so scared of my own self and whatever. And I mean, it got to the point when I first had her, I had no idea what to do with her. You know, I'm like, this is a living being. What am I supposed to, how am I supposed to keep this thing alive? You know, so
Right.
I go to the bathroom and she comes with me. And I'm like, okay, well, I got this baby. Now, what do I do? You know, so then I lay her on the floor next to me and go into the bathroom. I mean, it was just mind blowing to me that, you know, I have this being that's alive and I have to keep it alive. It's my job.
Right.
So it was really hard for me to step out of my comfort zone and do that. But I knew the moment that I got done moving my body that I felt so much better. It was just so, it was like night and day. It was amazing.
Yeah, I have experienced that myself with something as simple as just walking. That was a big deal for me
Hmm.
postpartum and just simple movements. Because for me, like, I tend to be really extreme when it comes to like body stuff, fitness, or like trying to get better postpartum. Like, I don't like struggling. I'd rather just be
Hmm.
good. Like, I want to fix it, I want to find the solution quickly.
Yes.
But it is amazing how things like walking and yoga, just that whole reconnecting to your body helps so much with the mental part of it.
Hmm.
So, and I mean, I know now you're just living in the yoga world. You've helped so many other
Yes.
women. So, could you share a little bit about that? Like, how did yoga start to really impact you and change your life to the point where now it's like such a huge part of your world?
Well, like I said, when she was 9 months old, that was basically the first class that I took. And, you know, typically when you're good at something, you want to stick with it. And so for me, I'm like, my flexibility is really good. You know, I'm able to go and get deeper into these poses. And so I was like, man, I'm kind of good at this. Like, I think I might keep doing it, you know? And then it kind of died off a little bit. I mean, I continued to work out and do those things, but yoga itself kind of, you know, it wasn't as big of a deal for me until 2014, 2015 rolls around and my husband and I get a divorce. And I mean, we were going to church, we were doing the things. It was it was a difficult season because we had been together. We knew each other since we were like babies, you know, and so I leaned very heavily back into yoga and on my yoga mat. And so luckily, I worked at a dance studio, and I was doing the marketing for them. And somebody had approached us and asked us if we would be interested in having a yoga class in one of our extra studios, and she would be doing hot yoga. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. You know, I think that's the coolest thing ever. So they started attending her classes. And I'm going to tell you what, like, I was just doing regular old yoga. It's like P90X yoga too, you know, it's like whatever, you're just kind of doing it. And then I took her class and I instantly fell in love. I fell in love with her. I fell in love with the style of yoga. I fell in love with the heat. Like everything about it, I just felt so much better. And during the divorce, that little space, that community is what held me up really, really strong because I needed them and I needed that practice and I needed the stillness. And so I relied a lot on it during that time. I was a stay at home mom basically because he was still working in the oil field. So when we were getting a divorce, I had to find something to do. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to take teacher training. So I ended up taking 200-hour teacher training, loved it even more. Then I started teaching my own classes and I just connected with these people on a different level. I don't know why. I think I just loved them. I loved being able to be there for them. And we started off very small. So I just had a couple classes a week. And then I moved into a really super small space. I mean, like, I had a really tall student and he couldn't even like extend his arms all the way up. He's like, his fingers were like touching, his hands were like touching the ground. And we could only hold like 6 mats in there. And I'm like, okay, we got to find something else. And then we were able to move into another space, which was really close to us. And it just started to continuously build from there. I mean, it's been almost 10 years. Like, we've been doing this for almost a decade. However, some of the people from my church started to question what I was doing.
Mm.
They thought that yoga was taboo, right? They thought it was kind of
Hmm.
weird and it was eccentric. You know, what are you doing? This doesn't honor the Lord. This is whatever. And they would come in, and some of them came into one of my classes, and it's almost like they were like spying on me, like I'm going to see what she's doing, make sure that it's okay. And afterwards they were like, well, yeah, you didn't, chant or or, you didn't do anything like that. I was like, no, I didn't, because all we're doing is stretching our body. Like we're stretching and strengthening and toning our body, and we're creating that connection between the mind and the body. And it has taken me years of research to get this down to where I can explain it. And it's the simplest explanation between Jesus and yoga. And it's really just, where's your heart posture at? Like, what are you doing? If you walk into a room and you feel like, ooh, this is not where I need to be, do you stay there? Like, and then just battle through it, or do you leave? Because that's the Lord telling you probably shouldn't be there. Listen to that. That's your discernment. I mean, we live in Texas, so we're right there in that Bible Belt, and
Oh, yeah.
it's hard. It's been hard and it's been a struggle, but that's why I wrote that book, part of it, just to get people to understand yoga doesn't have to be weird. One of my most favorite things is when I have pregnant students, because they come in and they start, it's just like this little tiny little bump, and then it starts growing, and it starts growing, and then pretty soon they're like full on, here's the baby, and so I bond with those little babies. Those are my yoga babies, these girls that are coming in and they have their baby, and then they're like, Ally, look, here she is, and I'm like, oh, she's beautiful, so it makes me love them even more, so because I kind of feel like I missed the excitement period, and I get to be excited with them. But not only that, our community makes sure, I tell my instructors, and like, if you personally know somebody that's pregnant and one of our students and you're close with them, I want you to be able to reach out to them and talk to them and make sure that they're okay. So it's not just they come in, we talk to them for a little bit. Like, I reach out to my moms that are recently had babies. I make sure that they're okay. I tell them postpartum depression is very real. If you need anything, please let me know. Very open. You want to go get coffee? Cool. You want to come over to my house? Great. Text me, call me. Let's talk about it, so that it's not just sitting in your chest to where you're like, oh, this is miserable. None of that would have happened if I wouldn't have been able to say, hey, put the weirdness away in the yoga. It doesn't have to be that way. Let's build it into a community and become pillars for each other, especially during postpartum.
That's huge. That's really amazing to see how God took your experience, like one of the hardest moments of your life.
Yeah.
And now what you've learned through your healing journey, you're able to pass on to other women and other moms and create a safe space where they have permission to feel what they're feeling and know that they're not alone in that.
Yes.
That's huge. Like, as a mom, I don't know how I would function if I didn't have people in my corner like that. And if I didn't have a space that felt safe, to process what I'm feeling. Cause I know this time around with postpartum depression, I just, you're tempted to hide, but when you do have those people who are checking on you, who
Mm-hmm.
are asking you what you need, praying for you, it makes a world of difference. And so for you now, like, being able to be there with those moms through that journey and incorporating yoga as well to, like, basically set them up for the healing postpartum, like giving them the tools they need to reconnect mind and body in that healing process is so, so cool. And also, I just have to say, I love that you brought up the weirdness yoga stigma, because I
Yeah.
feel like that's such a hot conversation going on right now. Should Christians do yoga? Is it weird? Is it wrong? Is it woo woo out there? But I think you explained it perfectly. It's like, what's your heart posture? And it's a beautiful
Mm-hmm.
tool that God gave us to reconnect with our body through breathing and stretching and, like, releasing emotions even through that. Like, some of the things that I've
Yes.
learned through connecting mind and body, like healing past trauma, whether it's, something completely unrelated to birth experience or it is postpartum, like, it just blows my mind, honestly.
Yeah, there's lots of resources out there that, that we can look at as far as where we hold certain emotions or tensions in our bodies. It's just really fascinating how yoga can do all of those things. But if we're so scared of it that we just won't even try it. Have you seen it on like Facebook where they're like, yoga's demonic, don't do it, blah blah blah,
Yeah.
they're like pointing
Yeah.
their finger at you, and I just have to shake that off. I have to shake that off, because I know in my heart that Jesus wants me to do this for my body. And if he didn't, then he would make that known. right? Like he'd be like, no, we're not doing this anymore. You're going to shut that studio down. I don't want you talking to people. Like he would do that, but he's not. And the studio is flourishing and our people are happy. I just don't see how something so beneficial can be deemed demonic. But can Christians get weird? Yes. Can yoga people get weird? Yeah. Can CrossFit people get weird? Yeah. Like in any realm or any division or grouping of people, you're going to find ones that are like extremists, and you're going to
Right.
find ones that are like, whoa, like way down here.
I think so too. And I have other friends who are in the Christian yoga world, and the stories they've told me, the testimonies and healing in their own lives and the other women that they've worked with is
Yeah.
just, it's really cool. So I love that you've just been able to share so much about this and educate people about how beautiful like it can be when we tap into not the weirdness of it,
Yeah.
but like
Yeah.
how did God design our body? That's what fascinates me and just leaves
Mm-hmm.
me in awe, is like God designed our bodies to heal, and this
Mm-hmm.
is one way that we can connect and do that. So I love that. I would
Mm-hmm.
love to know as well, because it's been a while now. You said you're a decade into this, but kind of circling back to that postpartum season where it was all fresh for you,
Mm-hmm.
how did your faith begin to evolve from there? Like, I know you mentioned that moment where you were just crying out to God and you started to see the change and started to lean into him. But what is it like now?
Oh my gosh. I gave everything I had that night because I just fully surrendered in that moment. Like I had no other choice. And so when he saved me that night, that was the time where everything shifted in my faith. Then I started to really realize who's in charge here. It's not me. It's him, right? So it was a kind of a slow process then. Like I started to get back into church. And then I wanted to put Kendall in Weatherford Christian School. And in order to do that, you got to be able to go to church. You got to be able to have the same type of values and morals and things like that at home that they're trying to teach you in the school. And so in order for her to get into the school at that time, I had to go to church. So that was another driver. So I did that, continuously growing in my faith and walking with Jesus. I found a program called Fully Alive, and it's a freedom ministry, and it rocked my world. I left there I just left all my shame, my guilt, any of those things that had occurred and that, like when I was younger, in my previous marriage, things like that. And I continued down. I kept going and kept working, and I got a little bit more involved in the church. And even during the divorce, I had a really strong community in our church, which was really great. And then coming back full circle, my husband now, Cody, I met him at the yoga studio. One of my instructors brought him, and we started dating. But that night that we met, I looked at him and I looked at his wrist. And so when you go to Fully Alive, they'll give you like jewelry, like a necklace and a bracelet. For the men, it was a leather bracelet. And that was the end of it. So
Oh,
then we got
wow.
married, and we're like going on 5 years married. We're pretty involved in our church, but I would definitely say he's number one. Like Jesus is number one for sure.
That's so cool. I can hear in your story so much redemption, not
Yeah.
just the postpartum depression and how God has turned that full circle for you to be able to pour into so many other women, but just seeing how God just completely transformed your heart, and you can see it on you. And I've been in your yoga studio and classes with you and things like that. And it's different. There's a different glow and joy about you. And I know that's just something that's straight from the Lord. And
Yes.
so I think that is really powerful, especially when we're talking about postpartum depression, because I feel like a lot of new moms or moms who are going through this almost feel like, oh, will I ever get past this? Will it ever get easy?
Mm-hmm.
Will I ever experience joy? Like, I thought motherhood was going to be this light, easy, beautiful thing, and I want to love it, but I'm not there. Like, what would you say to that mom who wants so badly for it to be beautiful and sweet, but she's just not there yet?
I used to beat myself up over that over and over and over again, thinking I missed out on some of the most important times of my baby's life. And then the Lord so sweetly reminded me there will be other chances. There'll be more. There'll be more chances to love babies. So I'm like, well, then I'll be a grandma. But he's like, yes, you will. And that's okay. And so just because miss out on it now, that doesn't mean that we won't get it later. I think is so important. And even my friends that have babies, like I would love on them and kind of help fill the void. And it's so important to remember that the time that was, I don't want to say stolen, but the time that was taken during those few precious few months can redeem them, and he can make it something so beautiful. And when you're in the trenches of this postpartum depression and you feel like you can't get out of bed and you're scared and you don't know what to do, I just urge you, pray your little heart out. Pray as hard as you can and journal. Nobody else has to see that journal but you. And you write down all that stuff, get it out so it's not bottling up inside of you. And it does get better. There is more to it. There's more to the trials that you're facing in this moment. I know how difficult it can be. And it's so, so hard when you're in the midst of all of that depression to see some kind of light at the end of the tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the main thing that I would tell them is to talk about it too. Find somebody to talk to, because if you don't, then you're going to get into this isolation and you're going to go into hermit and you're not going to be able to hear anything that the Lord's trying to tell you because you're so stuck, just stuck.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you, if you do talk about it, the person that you finally open up to is going to be like, oh man, you too? You struggle with that too? Yeah. And that's an immediate bond right there. But there's light. There's light at the end of the tunnel. You just got to keep going.
It's true. I echo everything you said. I think it feels like forever when you're in it. It feels impossible. It feels like, oh, will I ever get past this when you're in it? But it's true. Like when you invite people into the process, there's this quote from Ann Voskamp that I love and I always come back to, that shame dies when stories are told in safe places.
Yes.
And that's what I think of when I think of you, Ally. Just you've created such a safe space for women to come and not only practice yoga, but activate their faith in community. Like the fact that now you serve on a prayer team and you've written this book, like you are going to war with these women. Yes. And you are just passing that freedom on, which is like, what more could we ask for from our stories, is like to be able to turn it into something God can use to set other women free and encourage other women in the process too. So I love it. I just love it. I cannot wait to get my hands on this book. So before we go, where can everybody get your book, connect with you, and learn more from here?
You can get the book on Amazon. It's called Physical and Spiritual Stretching. So it's pretty easy to remember, I think, because it's like stretch my body, stretch my mind. Yay. And you can connect with me anywhere. So I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram. Our yoga studio is also on all those social platforms. Yeah, I mean, you can always send me any kind of a message and I will love to talk to you about anything. The book itself is just it's a short read. I feel like there's a lot of goodness that came from it, and especially in some of the reflection sections where I talk about postpartum depression and anxiety.
I love that. I love it how you just like put it all into one, like the perfect manual that we all wish we had to get through those hard moments. It's perfect. So thank you so much, Ally. I just appreciate you being willing to share your story and to encourage so many other women. And just thank you for being here with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. And I just am so thankful that we're able to speak out and try to help these ladies that may be struggling, because they just need it. They need Jesus and they need some community.
Yep. Amen to that. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to tune into another episode of the By Word Show. I love having you here, and I am truly so thankful for your support. Don't forget to share a screenshot of this episode to let me know you were here. And quick favor, if you enjoyed this episode, would you take a second to leave a review? It really helps our community grow. If you want more, you can shop my books Waking Up and Love Is at thehannahhughes.com or on Amazon. And be sure to join my email list for all the latest news. I can't wait to chat again soon, but in the meantime, be sure to come connect with me on social media, and remember, I'm cheering you on.